you're watching this video, it's very likely that you are someone who has dealt with trauma, who is on the healing path, or who is on the spiritual path. Whatever it is, wherever you're at in your journey, there are things that happened in your past or that are happening currently that you are trying to heal from, that you are doing your best to heal from, and that you feel you have these energies stored within you, these old energies, this old conditioning that you want to get rid of, that you want to cleanse. And at the basis of that, at the basis of all of that, the root of it is fear. Fear, fear, fear. When we don't have trust in ourselves or in the outer world, the base of it, the root of that emotion is fear. Think of the chakra system. If you're not familiar with the chakra system, the root chakra, the first chakra, the base of our spine, that red glowing sphere, when that is out of balance, that is the root of security. That is our security. And from that comes fear. There's a lot of fear involved when we have that imbalance. That's one perspective right there. You know, lately I've been having this song stuck in my head, Slaves of Fear by Health. You can check that out. Check out the lyrics. You'll see how relevant that is, because it's true. The human condition is often rooted in fear, and it's not something that's bad or good. Let's not label these things bad or good, because truly, genuinely, fear has kept us alive. It has kept us from getting eaten by the saber-toothed tiger. It has kept us from going into a rival tribe and getting killed. It has kept us alive. It's an evolutionary adaptation. Fear comes from the amygdala. It's very biological and it has a function. It serves a function. It's when that fear goes out of whack. It's when that fear becomes an illusion. That's the type of fear that I'm referring to. And if we really start to observe, we really start to pay attention, you'll notice the motives that most people have, including myself, are driven by fear. Fear of failure, fear of abandonment, fear of annihilation, for example, losing money or not surviving, whatever it is, right? The root of it is usually fear. We are driven by fear. It's a very strong emotion. It's kept us alive. The thing is, much like complex PTSD, being driven by fear, it is stuck in our tissues. It is stuck. It is something that we have to slowly undo, that we slowly have to release a contraction of our muscles, a contraction of that fear that has been given to us from childhood, from whatever trauma that we experience. It's fear in our mind, fear in our emotions, fear in our body. I'm not trying to trigger you right now, I promise. Like, I know it might sound overwhelming, but this is something that I have felt viscerally, I've felt emotionally, spiritually, and have slowly undone, slowly cleansed myself and purge what no longer serves, that fear that is an illusion. There's this quote in the movie Apocalypto, and basically I'm gonna like summarize it. I'll probably post something right here, an image you could read. He's a chief of the tribe, and he's telling his son, he could see the fear that his son has witnessing these invaders. He says something along the lines that fear is a sickness. It has tainted your peace already. Do not let that infect the village. Do not let that infect our people. And it's so true. Like, when one person is in fear, it starts to infect others. You see someone panicking, yelling fire. Of course, by instinct, we're very instinctual beings. Fear is spread really easily, even if it's not real, even if that person is making it up and it's not a real thing to be fearful for. But naturally, that vibration starts to spread. So in that way, fear is a sickness. And think of it like, we all know that chronic stress, which is fear, stress is a form of fear. It's a derivative of fear. It's a consequence of fear. This stress, this chronic stress, there are so many studies showing that it is bad. It is extremely bad for our bodies because we're in that constant fight or flight. We're not regulated. We're not in balance. We're not in homeostasis. We do genuinely, like the song by Health, we do genuinely become slaves to fear. But fear is an illusion. There are real fears, okay? Like in terms of survivability, you should be scared of that jaguar. You don't want to be mauled by the jaguar, fair enough. But in general, when we sit down and really contemplate in presence, with calmness, you realize so much of the fear has been implanted in us. So much of the fear comes from media. It comes from the external. It comes from expectation. It comes from self-imposed limitations. It comes from self-imposed standards, self-imposed desires and wants that genuinely do not progress us, that genuinely do not belong to our higher self. Maybe right now, who knows, maybe me telling you all this, like, oh my God, you know, I'm gonna kill myself in terms of like I'm gonna kill myself health wise because I'm constantly stressed because I still am dealing with CPTSD, which is a constant stress on my body, and I can feel it. I understand that feeling because for much of my life, I felt it in my body somatically. CPTSD manifested in a way that was very physical. I was anxious. I had fibromyalgia, literally, like my hands would just hurt for no reason. Like I couldn't stand cold water. Like it hurt really bad. I was having panic attacks all the time. My stomach hurt. I had gastritis. Like my body was falling apart and I was very young, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. That age, my health was at its worst, even though I was supposed to be at my peak. And it was because of this constant fight or flight, the stress response that I couldn't regulate. But the thing is, the hopeful thing is, you can be okay and I am okay. Like right now, we're okay. It is something that can be worked on. And I know because I've lived and I'm living on the other side of that. By being intentional with our lives and dedicating every day and being dedicated and disciplined in our self love, in our self care, in our routines, we slowly undo that fear and we begin to release. But it's going to be difficult because it took me going deep into that fear, going into oblivion to experience the peace of realizing it's not real. It's all conditioning. It's all been imposed on me. It's spiritual warfare. I invite you to be conscious right now. If what I'm saying is in a way making anxiety worse, I understand because it's not the most positive, loving conversation to have, something to talk about. But I want to tell you that despite all these facts that I've given you, all these things that I've told you, there is so much hope. The thing about it is, even though I can say, chronic stress is bad for the human body, it is. But the human body is also extremely resilient. The human body is capable of healing itself. It's resilient, it's salient, it recovers. And there are more and more studies showing that when we heal, there are epigenetics. This is the epigenetic field of biology, that our genes that heal turn on. Literally, our biology starts to change as we heal. And I've experienced that myself. I do not have fibromyalgia anymore. I do not have panic attacks anymore. My breathing is a lot more relaxed. I feel more toned. I feel more attuned to my body. I'm present and I'm not going away. I'm not like running away from myself or my body. I'm a lot more present and I sleep a lot better. I was a person that had sleep paralysis all the time, and this is actually relevant to here. I don't know if this is something that people with trauma have, but I know I had sleep paralysis almost on a daily basis. And funnily enough, before even going into this healing work deeply, I found out that the way to get out of sleep paralysis, that terror of being completely paralyzed and sometimes hearing screeching sounds and all this weird stuff happening around me, I found that the more I fought it, the worse it got. The more I fought, like trying to move, and the more stuck I felt, the worse it got. Yet, when I learned, all right, calm your brain down, breathe slowly and intentionally, is when I would get out of it. I would snap out of it. And that's the key I found to the sleep paralysis. I found out that fear fed it, that me giving it more energy and more attention fed it. But when I calmed down, I realized I'm going to be okay. This is going to be okay. This isn't real. It feels real, but it isn't real. And I would snap out of it. When I learned that lesson, I actually stopped having sleep paralysis. I don't have sleep paralysis anymore. And I had it for years. For years, I had sleep paralysis. And like I said, there was a time where I had it every day for a while. But it was teaching me something. And it taught me an important lesson because that was the first time that I realized fear made it worse. That when I let go, released that fear, and was relaxed and breathing and told myself I was okay and felt it, it genuinely was okay. It's the same concept. It takes practice. It takes toning ourselves and becoming accustomed to this new regulated version of ourselves. But it's there. It exists. It takes time. It takes consistent, loving dedication. But it does exist. Another lesson that I learned through this is a lot of people that have complex trauma, and I'm sure you'll relate to this, in relationships, they are not the best. They tend to be very chaotic. We tend to attract people that aren't of our best interests. And I'm not trying to blame the people I've been with because it's been me too. I've been the problem as well. I've had to work on things as well. A lot of people with this trauma background will be either anxious or avoidant. I'll almost guarantee that they're not secure. They don't have a secure attachment style. If you don't know about attachment styles, you can Google it. There's also a book called Attached. I forgot who the author is. Something Levine. It's a fantastic book. I really recommend it. But basically, you either fall in one of those two. I noticed that people with my background will tend to be anxious or anxious avoidant. And for most of my relationships, I was anxious avoidant. So that meant that I wanted affection, I wanted love, I would get clingy, but then I would also be avoidant and be like, you're being too controlling. Like, I would push them away. It was the most bizarre shit, but I did this when I was younger, from like about 16 when I was a teenager to maybe 20, 19, around there. I was anxious avoidant. Literally, I would want that person's attention and then I would run away, and it was bad. It was toxic. I do not condone it. And actually, me speaking about it says a lot because it used to be a very great source of shame. And now I can speak about it openly because it's the truth. It's my story. It's how I've grown and evolved. I'm not ashamed of it because being ashamed of it is a low vibration emotion. It's a low vibration. And carrying shame in your body is also very dark. It's very triggering. Doesn't, it isn't conductive to us healing. So letting go of maybe things we were ashamed of or are ashamed of is very important in this work. We let it go. It's okay. Forgive yourself. Genuinely forgive yourself. So I was this chaotic, anxious avoidant, and I'm going to tell you a story real quick because this is relevant to this whole topic. But basically, a few years ago, in my 20s, I was in a very long-term relationship, and she was more avoidant, and that changed my anxious avoidant attachment style to fully like anxious. Basically, I was anxious all the time. And what is anxiety? Anxiety is fear. Fear of losing that person, fear of losing something, fear of abandonment. And that fear of abandonment is, oh my God, it's horrible. You feel it in your body. Your stomach feels sick. It's just this constant looping of thoughts. You're not at peace. That's how I felt constantly in this relationship. And it definitely wasn't healthy for myself or for the other person. And we were just both not good for each other. We both, well, I would say she was anxious and avoidant at the same time. I was more on the anxious spectrum in that relationship. It's funny how the dynamic kind of changed. But at the root of it is fear. I was always afraid in that relationship whether she was going to cheat on me, and it had happened. So like, of course it was logical in terms of like, yeah, if you cheated, of course you're gonna cheat again. But I stayed, so I have to be accountable. And at the same time, for myself, I was also behaving in ways that were not befitting of me, that were very low, constantly vigilant of what she was doing. And is very, very unhealthy for both of us. We're both doing the same things to each other because we both suffered of insecure attachment, and we're both afraid of losing each other. The irony of that is we pushed each other away. We didn't work out because we were afraid. She was afraid of losing me and afraid of losing her independence, and I was also afraid of losing her and losing my independence. So it's just like this really bad mesh. And it's funny how complementary our wounds were in terms of we were teaching each other a lesson. And I've definitely taken it that way, where I learned how I do not want to behave, how I do not want to feel, how I do not want to treat someone, and how I don't want to be treated. And now I know how I want to be treated. Now I know how I want to behave in a relationship. Now I know what it is to be healthy. It took losing her and going through the worst possible breakup, like the worst, like the fears that I had occurred. Like they genuinely, the things that I was afraid of happened. I was abandoned, I was betrayed, and all this horrible stuff happened in between. So I had to go deep in that fear because the fear was real. But when I went deep into that fear, I also lost that fear because it had happened. What was going to happen now? It had already happened, and I was okay. Like, I was dysregulated for a good amount of time. I felt horrible. I was going through withdrawals from this relationship that was very codependent and very unhealthy. But I had lost what I thought was my world at the time. And you know what that is like. If you are someone that has CPTSD, is in a codependent relationship, and lose that one crutch that you thought you needed. It's like the world is ending, but then you realize the world didn't end, that you're okay and that you can build something off of that. I also want to say at the same time, my sister had passed away. She literally died, and I watched her pass away in front of me. And it was a very traumatic experience for myself. And there was a lot of fear associated with that because I saw her in fear. I saw her afraid of dying. I saw her afraid all the time. And that whole year, I dealt with that fear. I felt that fear in my body of death. But I went into it. I went into it deeply. And when you go into the worst thing that could happen to a human, right? Death. It's like you dissolve something so deep, so dark, that your light transmits it. It's like you transmute that energy. Now I live a life on the other side of that. I had to transmute all that darkness, the breakup, the abandonment, the betrayal, the actual death that I witnessed. I've transmuted that. I'm not saying I don't feel fear, but I go into it. Even now, like I'm filming this in a park. And it's a public park, okay? There have been people walking by. Like there's literally a person not that far from me right now. But, a prior version of myself would have never done this, would have never put myself in that position. I would have been way too embarrassed. I would have cared about what other people think, and I would have just been afraid. I wouldn't have done it. But now all my videos, check them out. They're all outdoors. They're all, where people are at. Not usually, but sometimes people pass by. Sometimes people like watch, but it's not a big deal. You learn to go into that fear and you find out you're okay. And just yesterday, the author Robert Greene posted something on his Instagram saying, hey, anybody in the LA area interested in this filming, asking Robert Greene a question, whatnot, apply here. And I did. And it was for today. So it was like a last minute, less than 24 hours type of thing. I signed up. I even had to send a video of myself explaining why I should be chosen. And I did it. And a little part of me was still had that fear, like, oh man, like that anxiousness. But I did it anyway, and I recognize if this was me even a year ago, I wouldn't have done it. I would have seen, oh my god, they want a video of me. Nah, like I'm just not gonna do it. I'm not gonna bother. I don't want to do it. But I did it anyway. As shitty as that video was, it was a 10 megabyte long video, not long at all. Yeah, I did it because I was like, what is there to lose? Am I really going to let fear rule me when that fear isn't real? It's not like tangible. I'm not gonna die. So that's the beauty of this life now. Those are just small examples of how my life has changed by going deep into that darkness and coming out of it and learning how to regulate, learning how to live with that feeling, and learning how to come back to center, learning how to transmute, learning how to take that energy and turn it into something new. That nervousness, that anxiety, like what if I did get chosen? Like what if I ended up meeting Robert Greene? Like hell yeah, I'm gonna be anxious. But anxiety, another side of that coin is its excitement. I forget what it's called, but it's the same signals that get released in our brain, in our bodies. Anxiety and excitement, they're the same. Physiologically, they are the same. So why not change the perception into excitement instead? There's this anxiety, but it's excitement. It's excitement for what's to come. I know it takes time to get there, but I promise you, it's possible. Through showing up every day, whether it's being conscious of our breathing, of our thoughts, of giving ourselves self-compassion and love, and showing up every single day, even on the days that we don't feel like it, just that little bit. It could be the smallest thing, drinking a glass of water to keep ourselves hydrated. It's that intention of, I am loving myself and I'm learning how to regulate myself. That consistent effort in ourselves pays off long term. Maybe right now you can't see it. I don't know where you're at, but maybe you're in the beginnings of that. But I promise you, like, it is possible to be on the other side of that. And if you're just like me and in the middle of this ride, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, like that, you learn how to love that part of the journey, even the shitty parts. It's the alchemical formula. I always go back to that. The alchemy of ourselves, the alchemy of our souls, the alchemy of our bodies. When we start to see the beauty of what our body and our spirit are capable of, there are no words to it. There's just so much possibility when we're able to reach into that quantum level of what's possible, and we realize this game has rules and we can win at it. That's when you step into that power. And trust me, once you've gone into that and you've been through hell, you've literally been through hell, you become unstoppable. And even when we become dysregulated, like I have in the past month, it's okay. Like it's just another lesson. It's another part of that spiral, that ascension. It's a part of the hero's journey. Anyway, I hope this video has been helpful. I'd really appreciate it you if you subscribe or like this video, help push it out to other people who might benefit from this. And for anyone in the middle of that or not sure where to start, I really like Nicole De La Pera. She goes by the Holistic Psychologist on Instagram. She has a book out. It's called How to Do the Work. And she has other books, but I would start with that one, How to Do the Work, because that book really helped me learn how to regulate myself. It was like my first major step in really healing and seeing the tangible results of what's possible when you have a regulated nervous system. She also has podcast videos on YouTube, so check her out. And I'll be making more content like this, talking more about what to do, how to harness masculine energy, how to harness feminine energy, when to do and when to be, because both are very important. Thank you for watching this video, and I will catch you in the next one.